when I was in the hospital, I was like, well, you know what? Instead of suppressing everything like I usually do, let me like write this song right now. Because the words were coming to me while I was sitting there for 5 hours. I just had so many thoughts going through my brain at that time. So I I wrote the song.
Welcome to this new episode of the To Freedom podcast. My guest today is Courtney Schawl. She is a music therapist, songwriter, author, and founder of One Day Songwriter, where she helps people turn their stories and emotions into songs. Courtney discovered songwriting at just 11 years old, long before she understood that music would become the way she processed some of the most difficult moments of her life. And as we'll discover today, one of those moments changed everything. Courtney, welcome to Freedom. Hi, Courtney. Thank you so much for being here with me on To Freedom today.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
I am quite excited because you published two books and I read one and a half of them. I'm going to be
Yeah.
very, very honest. Time caught up with me. Exercise for the Soul. That's the one I finished, and it really touched my heart because it's all about music. And to me, I've always believed that music is the language of the soul. And as a singer, there was a period in my life when I stopped singing
Mm.
and my soul, it just withered. And I had to start singing again. So it's almost like a therapy for me today to just use my voice still. So that really touched me. And then the second one is You Are the Sum of Your Last Two Moves. And it's all about the Fibonacci sequence, which is also quite interesting. But let's backtrack, Courtney. In the bio, we read about a little bit of your background. And so my question for you to start with today is you were in foster care as a baby before your grandparents raised you. And
Mhm.
looking back now, how do you think that early instability shaped the little girl you became?
Yes. So it's so interesting because, from 0 to 2, when I was in foster care, psychologists say you don't remember most things. And that is very true. And I think it's a gift that I'm protected from a lot of things that I don't remember. Yet the emotional baggage, the things I had to work through with my brain were still there. So it was almost like I had kind of one personality of who I truly was, and then the trauma-ridden one where I didn't speak, I didn't talk, to the point where even in preschool, my grandma had to send a tape of me singing and dancing because they did not believe I could talk. So I think it really shaped me at a young age of being very protective of who I let into my life. And I was just very scared as a kid. I was very scared of connections with people. And in my case, being in and out of foster care, the reason my parents lost custody is because it happened so many times. I was in the military one, and then in the state one, and then they have like a three-strike rule. So despite that, I still had access to both my parents since it was an internal adoption later on when I was 9. So my parents were still very heavily in my life. And my grandparents did what they thought was best by keeping them in my life, but it caused a lot of, you know, trauma that maybe was unnecessary. But I'm so grateful for it because I've developed this very keen sense of knowing when somebody is not okay, where other people would kind of look at them and be like, oh, they're doing fine. I can kind of read through people's masks. And so that's a gift I wouldn't have been able to have, to know other people are not okay.
That's quite incredible because I sometimes think that people really show up in our lives, whether it's parents, it wasn't definitely in my case, to teach us lessons of resilience and forgiveness and a long list of things. And sometimes it's your attitude. It's instead of becoming a victim,
Mm.
it's to rise above it and see what you can learn from it. So it sounds like you definitely took some lessons from it, some hard lessons from it that was quite valuable in your life.
Yes, and they still keep coming. I recently, unfortunately, um, and I have forgiven her, but my birth mom recently blocked me and actually wrote her boyfriend wrote bad reviews on all my books, just to spite. And it's like it's interesting. Recently, it's kind of brought up a lot of that past baggage and past trauma of um that instability. And so yeah, I'm like almost having to like re-forgive and reprocess that again. But yeah, I do feel like it's still though a very much a gift to just understand, hurt people. And so
Right,
knowing
for
that,
sure.
she probably had a lot that I don't even know about growing up in her own life.
Right, right. It's so interesting, Courtney, because my book goes about as very much about that. Is I moved away. I moved to the
Yeah.
opposite side of the world to get away from that.
Mm,
And but with technology, everything followed me. And
yeah.
I realized that the drama was still trapped in me. And it was when I could get rid of that within myself that I could find my true voice, my true self. And so it sounds just so similar to you, even though um, I'm not as in it as you anymore. Both my parents passed away, even though I still have siblings.
Mm,
But that drama is just not that, yeah, it's just not that present anymore. And there's
mm.
some things that show up, but that's why we do what we do, because we
Yeah.
learn the coping skills to rise above it.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So, Courtney, I want to come to your music because you started songwriting when you were 11. And long before you knew it was healing you. And when you look back today, what do you think that young version of Courtney was trying to say that she couldn't say in any other way?
Yeah, I think in my family, the trauma and the unnormal scenarios were very normalized. So my family, we're Italian, and so humor was used a lot to kind of not have to deal with what was really going on. And because of that normalization, I even remember being in school and repeating in middle school something that my uncles had said, and we had to go around and say something about our break, and I repeated something that I thought was quote unquote funny. It was about my dad and him getting on drugs, so definitely not appropriate, but because I was so involved in the humor side of what was really happening, I didn't know that other people didn't deal with this stuff. And so I remember the whole room going silent, and I was like, oh, like this is not funny. And I didn't know that until that moment. And so yeah, I think it was a way for me to share my emotions and my voice without getting repercussions, and really share what nobody else is really talking about. So one of my first songs was about my dad going back to prison for 7 years, and basically just saying like, it was called Hurricane. And I talked about how in that song he's like a hurricane where he comes and destroys and then goes back, but I still
Mm,
miss him. Kind of that turmoil of like, I want you in my life, but I also don't want you in my life. And I think that was something that nobody was really willing to talk with me about. I didn't have a therapist or anything. And so it was a way for me to vocalize to my grandparents and my family really how I felt. And I noticed that the adults in my life, or my aunt actually had me go to, she's a musician too. And she had me play at one of her gigs when I was like 13, 14. And I remember a bunch of adults in the audience just bawling their eyes out. And so for me, I realized that it was a way for me to be vulnerable, but also giving other people permission to be vulnerable too.
that's quite amazing because you write up in your book about how people who never thought that they could do any music now write these songs. Some of them are on Spotify, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing the gift you uncovered coming from pain, putting things to words, and then eventually to music. I find it quite fascinating that through your own experience you got to that place because you write about your birth parents that remained in your life. So it's almost this dichotomy because even in the song The Hurricane, you talk about, this hurricane blows and it's destructive, but yet you miss him. And so it's
Mhm.
both love and hardship. How did that shape the way you saw yourself?
Yeah, I think very conflicted. So, I'm learning, especially when you become an entrepreneur, it's the greatest therapy because you have to uncover all the flaws or just the programming that you have in your brain. And you really have to learn that the things that have happened to you, they have happened, and now you have to move on. But if you don't, they're causing, yourself to self-sabotage. So for me, in those cases, I always had the sense of not feeling good enough or, not really valuing my skill sets. So a big thing that I have found in myself is I'll undercharge or like I'll say my prices for something, like on my marketing business, and I'll like feel like, oh, well, I don't know if they can afford it. So then I'll like lower my
Mm,
price before they even, sometimes they're not even the ones like asking for it to be lowered. I just do it. And I self-sabotage or I take on another project when I know I'm really supposed to be focusing on my stuff. Um, and that's something I'm currently working through with that. But I have found it of this sense of like, I don't have it anymore, but in high school and college, for sure, I had very much like a self-hatred, like I just wasn't good enough and that I couldn't be loved.
mm.
And, a lot of that was like the abandonment side of everything. And so, yeah, I would say I have come a long way in that sense, but it's kind of furthered what I want people to know is that they are good enough. And what is beautiful is, I was just on a podcast, or I had someone on my podcast and we wrote a song together. And her thing is she secretly always wanted to write songs, but didn't think that she could or that she wasn't good enough. And the self-esteem that comes from, I mean, these songs we write them in 15, 20 minutes. I put it into AI so they can hear what it could sound like with a musician. Um, Oftentimes they want to sing it or learn it themselves. But regardless, she had her self-esteem, you could just see immediately rose. She's like, I I did not know that I could be like a songwriter. I didn't know that um I was this good at writing lyrics. And her song was really, really good. And she was processing a moment of her dad who was very volatile, always angry, and she was processing like feeling like she had to freeze in the room, and it was an incredible song. Um, but yeah, what I'm finding is we all kind of secretly want to express ourselves musically or artistically,
Mhm.
and we just haven't been given the permission.
That's so beautiful. And I want to ask you something you mentioned earlier was almost a segue into my next question. When you fill out your form for me, I have a question in there. What are you seeking freedom from?
Mm,
And you said that you were seeking it from your own mind. So tell me more
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so I think if anyone's been through trauma, they could probably relate, but the intrusive thoughts that you get, and for the longest time, especially being younger, I didn't know the difference between my thoughts or, thoughts that are intrusive. And so I felt like a lot of shame, and I still get them. And so for me, I've just been dealing with a lot of spiritual warfare mentally. And at nighttime, it takes a long time to fall asleep. It's like this weird, I really can't explain it. And this is going to sound crazy. So, but conspiracy a little bit. But there's something called like skull to it's this frequency thing. But there are these instruments that um can basically talk to people through frequency in their brains. And for me, I've always had this, and it's weird because it sounds like schizophrenia, but it's not, because you are so aware that they're not your thoughts and they're not coming from you, but they're also not external. It's really weird. But whether it is spiritual, whether it is, you know, something else, because to be honest, like with being in the government foster care, you kind of sometimes wonder like what might have happened, with them doing MK Ultra on foster care kids and stuff. So I've always kind of had this bondage, I guess you can say, and I still do with my mind, where it's constantly going, it's constantly um yeah, it's just like on overdrive, and it's like I can't rest in my own brain. And so music has helped me kind of cope and relieve it, but at the same time it's still very present.
And I think you're not alone in that. I think we all struggle with our thoughts, and I think a lot of the work that I do and a lot of what the industry does today in self-help is to help transform those thoughts,
Hmm.
and so that it can become something different. And I love that you are so unique that you use music, where in my case I use meditation. And
Mm.
but at the end of the day, all roads lead to Rome. So when
Hmm.
you can get that calmness in your own mind and start to believe that you are enough, you're good enough, you're worthy, it doesn't really matter how you get there. So
Yeah.
I'm just so in awe of you using music in that way. So Courtney, I'm thinking of you as a cycle breaker, because a lot of times I think when you grow up in certain situations, it's almost as if society expects of you to become stereotypical, um, just a victim of your circumstances. And
Hmm.
with you, um, with everything you've been through, leading to a very devastating miscarriage, it sounds like you've had so many defining moments of your life where you didn't just succumb to circumstances. Because I think many people who've been through what you've been through would just shut down, especially creatively. But instead, you wrote a song to your
Hmm.
unborn baby, or your miscarriage baby Gemma.
Yeah.
And why do you think songwriting became your way through grief?
Yeah. So, you know, I'll back up a little bit. Before that miscarriage, I had in 3 years had three babies, and in those same 3 years lost my grandma, my grandpa, and my bio dad. Well, very kind
Mm.
of sporadically. And I was shut down, and I wasn't actually really playing music, and I wasn't coping well. And the first time I opened up really was I wrote a song about my grandpa passing when writing the course curriculum for One Day Songwriter. And it was the first time I like really dealt with anything. And so because, you should um, practice what you preach, when I was in the hospital, I was like, well, you know what? Instead of suppressing everything like I usually do, let me like write this song right now. Because the words were coming to me while I was sitting, I was there for 5 hours. They were not treating me. They had to call a code on me because I had to get a blood transfusion because my blood pressure went to, 60 something over 35. It was really bad. Um, but I just had so many thoughts going through my brain at that time. So I I wrote the song, and I allowed myself, because I was in one of the back rooms and there was so much going on at that hospital. I just allowed myself to like cry in the moment, where in the past I would have just kind of suppressed it and been like there for everybody. That's kind of always been my role of like keeping it together. And so in this moment, I didn't. And it was interesting because the kid didn't know what was going on, but he came in, he's like, "Why are you so sad?" And I was like, I just
Oh.
I just lost a baby." And and like he didn't ask me, or like it took him like 5 minutes to really understand what was going on. And so he kept trying to like cheer me up, like, "Oh, it's okay, you're gonna be okay," not realizing what had just happened. And so yeah, I wrote that song. And then on the way to the airport, because I was out of town at a mastermind, I was supposed to be interviewed the next day. It was it was not it was the most unideal time ever. It was also on the blood moon, and I sang the song on the way to the airport, and I did just feel this full deliverance moment for myself. I did a bunch of deliverance prayers on me, and I did feel so many things lifted in that moment. But I came back home, and so many people expected me to be, really distraught. And it wasn't that I was suppressing this time, it was that I genuinely was just healthily coping over it. I would listen to my song, cry. I would regularly listen to it, maybe like 5 times a day. I'd listen to the song I wrote. And that's really what helped me release and allow myself to feel, because my home life, having three under three, is very chaotic, and so it was a way for me to deal with my emotions in a healthy way without having to let it out on, other people, or suppress it, or let it, destroy everything that I was doing.
So, in your life, you became a music therapist?
Yes, I did. That's what I got my degree in. I got board certified. I practiced up until COVID, where it changed everybody's lives, and so the unfortunate thing with music therapy is you have to be board certified, and it's very difficult to get. I had to do a 9-month internship unpaid, and so many people never even get it past that internship because it's so difficult um, to do as, a young, just out of college kid. You have to find another job on top of your 40 hours a week. But COVID, the hospital didn't consider us essential workers anymore. And
Mm,
so they didn't
right.
fire me, but they didn't give me any hours. So I had to go find another job. And after just so many things within the hospital system of being so political, I just thought to myself, I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I was so burned out by the bureaucracy around the therapy world that I just I didn't want to be a part of it anymore.
So, you created in the meantime a program called One Day Songwriter. How was the
Mhm.
evolution of that, the idea into the aha moment that this can actually be bigger than it seems?
Yeah, so I was working at a pregnancy center, and I had learned about marketing and working for yourself. And so I went on to this whole business journey of becoming a marketer. Somebody approached me to build them a course. And so I built them a course, and I I kind of got that spark that, oh, well, maybe I can build a course for myself too. And so I started thinking, okay, what are my skills? What are my talents? And I thought, oh, you know what? It was right when AI started happening. I was like, well, I can teach people how to write a song and then show them how they can turn it into a full track with AI. So I actually came at it at an AI perspective. And I made, a couple thousand the first months, but I didn't something just kept the self-sabotaging. I like kind of stopped marketing it because I didn't think it was good enough, because one of the other courses I was building for somebody was really taking off. It was a fishing course. And so I thought, you know what, maybe people just don't want this. But I just kept having people in my life, my mentor, who, you know, he has got millions of followers, and he's doing really well for himself. And he had told me in one of our coaching calls, this has the potential to be a $15 million business if you've marketed it right. And I had just random people tell me not to give up on music, random creators saying like, even just the other day, I had somebody from Matchbox 20 say like, you are doing the right work, and all these just random people kind of encouraging me to keep going, even though there's been so much doubt in it. But really, I developed it from what I did at the psych hospital. In the psych hospital, we had groups of 10 to 13 people. I wanted to bring to them what had helped me, which was songwriting. So I showed them how to process it with their five senses and what they thought and felt. And that was, I, in my brain, thought, how do I write songs? And so I was finding a way to make it simple for them to write songs too. Because I don't personally sit there and think, okay, I'm going to write what I thought and felt and this, but it was a way to help them start thinking and bringing up ideas for themselves. But in those moments, they would write their songs in 10 minutes because we don't have a lot of time. I would collect their songs, and I had chords kind of already ready, the four chords that would sound good with most songs. And I would change them up, minor chord, this chord, whatever. But I would sing their songs. And what I found in the psych hospital every single time was people would just release and feel so much lighter. I had somebody who had a pain level of a 10 go to a 0. So it wasn't even just emotional healing, it was also physical. So when AI came, I thought, I could recreate what we were doing in the psych hospital, but on such a bigger scale. And now in October, we're actually going to be turning this into it's already set in stone, but in October, the licensed professional counselors for CE Impact, where I'm teaching them this method so that they, as therapists, can take the method and use it on their patients who traditional talk therapy doesn't work for. But
Oh, amazing.
yeah,
So, of course, I had to put this to the test. And so, as I
yeah.
was reading your book, I took a very personal situation that just happened. So, my father was very controlling. He passed away in
Mm,
December. In 2018, I asked him not to mention me, not to name me in his
mhm,
will. Long story behind it. And I just didn't want to be controlled by that. Oh, if you're not good enough, I'm going to write you out of my will anymore. So, but of course, he didn't. So, and now there's a situation where there was a little bit of old drama, like it
mm,
always kind of lingers in the wings. It kind of wanted to come back in my life, and I took that moment and I just like, okay, I'm going to write a song about my father. And it surprised me because I wasn't trying to write the music. I was just following your process. And I got to as far as the lyrics and but the release and just the realization, acknowledgement, like, yes, you still teach me. You're still my teacher, even though you're not in this human life anymore. Um, he was such a difficult person when he was alive up until the very end. And now a thought that crossed my mind is, even from the other side of the grave, you still try to control us. And I
mm,
could use that and turn that with the lyrics into such a beautiful, almost a tribute to no, you just taught me, even now, you taught me how to just rise above this.
mm.
So I just really love your process. I just simply following it. And so, what do you think happens inside us when we I stopped trying to overthink it and to be so clever about it and to simply tell the truth as we are experiencing in that moment?
Yeah, I think I've seen this in so many traditional talk therapies and even journaling. We start to filter ourselves, and we're not honest with what we really truly feel. And so the reason why I think it works, because it's a weird phenomenon that honestly, even though I created this method, I really still don't fully understand, because my mentor did this with me, and he texted me that I changed his life in ways I can't comprehend. I've had people just say they feel lighter, and it's something that you really can't understand until you've experienced it. But neurologically it does make sense, because um we when we typically write, we typically filter our thoughts. And so by brain dumping it out of writing what just the five senses of actually grounding you in that memory and then what you thought and felt in that moment, you're allowing yourself to be honest with really what happened versus what you want to change the story to be about. And I think that's the big difference that I have just seen in a lot of therapies of like we want to look for the upside or we want to look for the lesson or whatever it is, or even just we want to feel better about the thing. And this is about no, just feeling what you feel. And it's something that I think so many people, back since the human inception, people were writing songs and sharing and passing down lessons. And there's a book called This Is Your Brain on Music, and he talks so much about the neuroscience behind it, but it activates all parts of your brain. And so the ability to let it out and release, and then, later on write a new song, that creates the new neural pathways so that you can move on. But you can't move on if you still feel the things. And so you really have to demolish those old thoughts, those old beliefs, which you do by writing it down on paper.
So you've helped quite a few people now writing their own songs. Are they some of the stories that stand out to you?
Yeah, there was one. She was a therapist, and I'll try to change details because hers was very
Right,
difficult,
of
but it
course.
was a very abusive situation. And, you know, she is somebody who practices therapy for other people, right? And in hers, she thought she was over that memory and then broke down. And she, by writing the song, realized what was actually harming her this whole time, which was one of her lyrics was, why, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, why do I feel like I always have to take care of you when you're supposed to take care of me? And she
Mhm.
had never really came up with that thought logically or, in traditional therapy or talk therapy. But that was the core of why she was so wounded. So that was really impactful because in that moment, it helped her have a place to realize, okay, this is what's actually causing me to have so many issues everywhere else in my life, is that she always feels like she has to take care of other people, and that was rooted from her having to take care of her parents' emotions. And that's a very much like a typical theme I've seen someone on my podcast, it will be on, but she said the same thing of like she had to feel, everyone in her family had to feel exactly what the father felt in that moment. And this one I can talk publicly about because it's going to be on a public podcast. But she, her dad was very abusive in that way, like verbally abusive. And so those themes just keep coming up. But for her, she had again didn't really realize what the core was. And what I do in the chorus is the main idea. And you get to the main idea by writing your outer journey of like this is what physically
Right.
happened, and your inner journey of this is how I was emotionally and what I was thinking about during that moment. And the in between of those two is where the one big idea comes from, but that's the message that we're trying to get out to people. So I would say those two were really impactful. um Another one that was really impactful too was in the psych hospital. There was a guy who was very mad. He did not want to be there. He was very closed off, and he wrote a song about how dumb this was. And I told him, I said, you can write about how dumb you think this moment is. And so that's what he did. And I sang his song, and everybody laughed in like a good way, and it brought a lot of happiness into the room. And then I started going and singing other people's songs. So someone wrote about their mom passing away from cancer. Someone wrote another song about being abused, and I just remembered looking over at his face, and he had regret. of I wish I was open and vulnerable. And I
Mm.
noticed that he started rewriting a new song. We didn't have time,
Mm.
unfortunately, to write his song, but even just allowing him to write and then hear from other people showed that reflection of, oh, I'm the problem. And I think that was really big in his healing.
That's just amazing. I know that there was somebody who once also didn't know what to write about. So you told him to write your song about, I don't know what to write about. Isn't that the one that's on Spotify today?
Um, that one, I don't know if I have that one on Spotify, but I do have one similar where he um he wanted to write about like being grateful for life and he didn't know what to write about. Yeah, one of the ones I did on one of those online chat rooms, which was a crazy
Yes.
experience, but yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So looking back today, how many songs have you written for yourself that was really just healing?
Oh man, so many. I mean, I had an opportunity. I was talking with a record label when I was in my early 20s, and so I wasn't able to move to Nashville at the time. It was just a whole self-sabotage, but also probably a protection of, when you get into the labels and record industry, they have control over your writing. So, I think it was a good thing that it didn't work out, but they had me writing a song every single day. So, I really worked that muscle and I wrote a lot of songs during that time. I mean, 1 month, that's 30 songs. I can't even tell you how many songs I wrote.
Mm.
But sometimes I just write and they're not even finished songs, but I'll just start singing something in the moment in the day. And those are just almost as powerful as the finished and complete songs are the ones where, I've had one where right before my book signing, I was really anxious. And so on the way to kind of heal that anxiety, I was like, well, maybe I should, again, practice what I preach. And so I started making a song about how anxious I felt going over there because I knew it wasn't going to be big. And yeah, and so that's what I did. And it it worked. I felt immediately like calm and better. And it was just me making it up, singing it in the car on the way there.
Right, so I kind of want you to walk us lightly through the process of the songwriting because ultimately I want people to be curious enough to go buy that book
Oh yeah.
and to join your community. So exercise with the soul. So you have a method, a process of the songwriting. So walk us through that.
Yeah. So basically you pick a memory that lives pretty rent-free in your head. And if you're listening, I would get a piece of paper out and you're going to write down the moment. And a lot of people struggle with this because they're like, well, I want to write about my dad or I want to write about feeling not good enough or whatever it is. If you feel that as a memory, I want you to think of an even closer memory of like a moment you didn't feel good enough, or even, somebody I wrote a song with on a podcast and his was he always wakes up at 4 a.m. just feeling stress from his finances. So I said, well, let's write about one time that you felt that stress. Maybe it was yesterday. So it has to be a very specific memory because you can write more songs. Then you're going to write on your paper what I see, what I hear, what I touch, what I taste, what I smell. You might not have a ton for every, section, but you're going to write those down. You give yourself a 5-minute timer and you're just going to brain dump everything that you remember in that moment. It can be even something like I tasted my mouth or like I drank water or I saw a blank wall. Like whatever it is, make it a complete thought, but write everything down that you can literally remember. And then you're going to write down what you thought and felt and do the same thing for another 5 minutes. But in this one, it's not what you think and feel now about the memory, it's what you think and feel back then. And so you're gonna just write everything. I mean, nobody's gonna see your paper, so be honest and write what you really thought, what you really felt. I have an example of my whole process down too. If you go to onedaysongwriter.com/worksheet and you can download the worksheet for free. But then once you've done that, congratulations, you are a songwriter because now you are just going to copy and paste what you wrote down. And the best songs are the songs that are truthfully like you talking to somebody on the phone. As so many
Hmm.
people think music is poetry, and really, I actually saw a video today. It's so funny, but he says poets make the worst songwriters, and it's because they're trying to make meaning and all this stuff when really music is meant for emotion, and emotion comes from common language. You can have a metaphor in there, here and there, but anyway, so you are going to then have 4 lines on your paper for your verse one, 4 lines for verse two, and your chorus is what we write at the end, 2 to 4 lines. Each line is 6 to 12 syllables. So that's bird is 1 syllable, lemon is two. And this is just, you can technically get away from this, but this is just how you can write a song without having to understand music theory because the syllables match up to the amount of notes and bars for a typical story song. So you look at your processing paper and you think, okay, what's the first thing that's sticking out to me? Typically, your first verse is that what actually happened, outer journey. So what you saw, what you thought, all that stuff. And then your second verse is what you thought and felt in that uh moment. And that's kind of the inner journey. So we set up the scene in first verse, and we talk about how we thought and felt in that memory. And by doing that, you start to see the theme of like, oh, okay, this is really what the message is. So the big idea of this moment is. And so for my grandpa's song, I wrote down when he passed. I didn't write about him passing away. I wrote down the moment when I got the call that he passed away. And so I wrote, I saw dirty diapers in the corner. I was holding my baby. I felt like the tears, on my face and watched them drop on my baby. Well, if you go look at the worksheet, those are the lyrics in my song. I said, like, watching tears as they fall on my newborn baby's head. That's literally what happened. And the message that came out of that song was that one life ends when a new life begins. And that's what developed from me experiencing this turmoil of like, I'm supposed to be happy. I just had a baby and I need to care for them, but I also just lost a parent like the same week, and so it was that turmoil, but that was what it really was that one life ends when a new life begins. And then the second line in the chorus was, it doesn't seem fair, but it's evident here. So, typically when you have a baby, everybody's around and your family, your parents are there. And for me, that wasn't the case. And that's really what the emotional side for me was, is that I felt so alone
Right.
in that moment because I knew the one person I had left was gone.
Mm.
So, yeah. So that's what you do. And then after you do that, I personally use Suno and I show you how to make it actually sound good because sometimes people put it in and it's not very good. But you just put your lyrics in, you put the genre in, and it's free. So unless you're trying to, go put it on Spotify, this is a free application for you. And you listen to your song, and I bet you good money that you will feel something when you listen to your song outside of you. It's one thing to speak and sing it, and I usually sing into it to get my songs. But whether you choose to not use AI because you don't have to, you can just record yourself singing. But a big piece of the healing is the last step of listening to the song outside of you. That's really what heals you, the exposure side. And you can record on your voice memos on your phone and just listen to it, or you can use AI to listen to it. Both are free. And and you just be surprised at the emotion that comes out.
That's beautiful. And what is the AI platform you use for that?
I personally use Suno. And
Oh,
so
no. Okay.
and so I have in One Day Songwriter, I have a video, and it's a free 7-day trial. So you can, it won't bother me. You can go in and go for 7 days. And if it's not for you, that's fine. But you learn the process of Suno. It's a 45-minute speed course in there to show you exactly how you get the song that you want. Because some people would put like country song, and then it's kind of generic, but you can make it more tailored to you. Um, but it is incredible software. It really is. And so it's free, which is well why I teach that one.
That's quite amazing. Well, Courtney, this was lovely. And in closure, I want you to tell us today what is your definition of freedom.
For me, I think my definition is knowing that you have a choice in your life to do what you want. And I think including myself, um, we always feel like we need permission to do something from someone else, and we don't. And we get to choose and design our life the way we want. I never thought I was going to be getting to write songs with people for a living, but that's what I secretly wanted to do. It's not the way I necessarily thought it would be as a young teenager, but it's what I get to do now. And everybody has that unique gift and that secret desire that if they just give themselves permission to pursue, everything will open up.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Courtney. And then how can people connect with you? I will have all the links in the video description. So how can people connect with you?
Yeah, I have a website, CourtneySchawl.com. That's SCHAWL. Um, and they could also just go to my school community is probably the best place for this type of topic. It's SKOOL.com/ One Day Songwriter. That's where the free trial is and community. So we do workshops, we do open mics, and we have further course material than just writing the song.
Fantastic. Courtney, thanks again so much for being here with us, for sharing your very intimate journey and inspiring us so much to get healing through music. I absolutely love it. Really appreciate it. We didn't even touch on your other book, the You Are the Sum of Your Last Two Moves. But just to tell people, your books are on Amazon, right? Are they both on Amazon right now? Okay.
Yep, they're both on Amazon. Yeah.
Exercise for the Soul and You Are the Sum of Your Last Two Moves. Please buy them. I can definitely tell you, I have not finished the second one yet, but Exercise for the Soul to me was definitely worth it. So thank you again so much
Thank
for
you so
being here.
much.
Thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time with more freedom.
Thank you.